It's 7:11 on Wednesday, January 30th, 2013. And this is SalimMuWakkil's on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. You can also catch us streaming loud and clear at www.wvon.com and on iHeart radio apps. Happy to be with you on this, just my second Wednesday program of 2013. I hope you enjoyed the exciting Redbird games that played in my stead. But I'm privileged again with the opportunity to connect with the remarkable WVON audience, one of the most attentive and conscientious radio audiences in all of America. And of course, if you want to participate in the discussion, if you want to flex your mind muscles, just give us a call at 773-591-1690. Well, we're at the beginning of President Barack Obama's second term, and there are increasing demands that he be more explicit in his approach, or more forthright in his approach to the problems in the black community. Many people are beginning to speak out more boldly. The most recent example of this new attitude, I think, was registered with the comments of Florida Representative Alcee Hastings. He said that the president consistently disrespects the Congressional Black Caucus, the black press, and graduates of historically black colleges. Hastings, who is a former federal judge from Florida, he made these statements at the midwinter convention of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and that's a group of mostly of all really of black publishers of black newspapers. It's the association for that group, and Hastings told these folks that the CBC carefully vetted black candidates that they felt would be ideal for the second Obama administration, cabinet, sub-cabinet positions, other kinds of nominees, all throughout the administration. 61 of excellently credentialed black candidates. He says that they sent 61 names to the White House. Time went by, he says, quote, not one of that 61 was selected. Not one, he said. So that's distressing, right? Hastings also talked about the CBC's rebuffed attempts to get the president's team to spend more money with the black press. Out of a $1 billion budget for media outreach, the black press got just $1 million, and they had to fight for that. The CBC had to fight for that, Hastings said. At first, they only had like $685,000 that was allocated for the black press. And Hastings said, quote, at the gathering, he said, "If I was the president of the United States, there is no way in hell that I would raise $1 billion and don't spend but $1 million with the people who probably had as much to do with my becoming president as anybody, unquote. So that was Hastings talking to this group. He knew it was a group that would put the word out, and it was harsh criticism indeed. And it represents kind of a marked change of approach that the CBC has adopted, because you remember when Representative Maxine Waters broached the issue of the Obama administration's lack of adequate attention to issues affecting the black community. When she first broached that in Detroit, I remember at this town hall meeting, she was raked across the coals relentlessly by black commentators, and she was treated to vitriolic criticism. A lot of people, and this is despite the fact that Maxine Waters has a sterling history of service and sacrifice for the black community. But she simply made a mild criticism of the president, and she was raked across the coals as if she was a lifelong enemy of black folks. That was really a very unfortunate thing to witness. I made the point then that it seemed to be a little bit short-sighted for us to do such a thing, to have such an allegiance for a president who really is not acting on our behalf. He's a president. He has to do what a president does, and often that's not, for our benefit. Maxine has always been in our corner. So it was really a strange, but understandably, this criticism of her made black politicians more reticent to criticize the Obama administration because they didn't want to get raked across the coals like Maxine, or, of course, treated like Tavis Smiley, whose career has been essentially crippled. I mean, he's still doing well, but, and I'm not saying let's cry for Tavis because he's a millionaire and still probably raking in big bucks, but he was crippled in many ways by his criticism of the presidents. The same way he criticized Bush and Clinton, the same kind of harsh criticism he leveled at them at times. And unfortunately, though, that reaction to his criticism has forced him to kind of have a chip on his shoulder, and he's exaggerated things a bit too much. But at the same time, he had a right to do that. And had people listen, perhaps we would be in a lot better position today. Maybe because it's the second term and many in the black community expect the president to act bolder. Their political representatives now seem less reluctant to voice their own criticisms of the Obama administration. Now, had black politicians been as vocal as, let's say, Minister Louis Farrakhan in urging Obama to stay away from the effort to overthrow the regime of Muammar Gaddafi, we may be facing a much less dangerous situation than we are now in North Africa. There's little disagreement that the spark for this latest eruption of problems in North Africa, especially this eruption of Islamist imperialism, that was provoked by the fall of Colonel Gaddafi. And the neutralizing effect that his regime had on the numerous ethnic tensions in the region. Of course, we don't realize these things until you don't miss your water till the well runs dry, kind of thing. We didn't realize that he was keeping tensions at bay between the Tuaregs and the Bedouins and the Songhai and the Fulani, and some of the Islamist groups in Algeria and Niger, and some of the liberation groups within what they call Azawad, that part of Mali and parts of Algeria. And Gaddafi was very important in mollifying a lot of these tensions in a way that we had no idea was going to be necessary. Now we see what's happening. Everything is exploding in that part of the world, and people are beginning to try to take advantage of that chaos, and that uprising in Mali and Algeria, where they seized hostages in Algeria. It provoked the incursion of French forces into Mali, a big military occupation, so to speak. But they had been successful, really, in pushing back these Salafi jihadists who had run over northern Mali, taking advantage of the chaos in that part of the world. And in overrunning that part of Mali, they also overran the ancestrally significant city of Timbuktu. And because they are Salafist, they believe that their version of Islam is the only way of interpreting Islam, and so they destroyed other people's attempt to, other people's syncretic fusion of Islam with their indigenous traditions and whatnot, which is what happens all over. Just think, had they, if the Salafists came to this country, the first people they would attack, of course, would be the Nation of Islam, because that would be blasphemous to their beliefs. This whole racial issue and the fact that, all of that. So I'm saying that they were an unwelcome presence in that part of Mali, and so a lot of people are applauding what the French did. It is rather incongruous to have the African Union, for example, applauding the French for invading Africa, but that's exactly what they did, because no one else seemed to have the military wherewithal to expel these invading Salafists. So that's what's happening, and the French seem to be solidifying their control. They kicked them out of Timbuktu. As they left, though, they burned 2 libraries, according to reports, 2 libraries that contain very, very precious ancient manuscripts. I don't know if the manuscripts were saved or if they were destroyed with the retreat of these folks. But it is absolutely a shame what they did. Mali as a nation is almost symmetrically separated, demographically and geographically. The north is populated primarily by these groups, nomadic cultures, the Berbers and the Tuaregs. Really is better to call them the Tamashik. The Tuareg is kind of a pejorative, like you call the Mbutis the Pygmies, or you call the San people of South Africa Bushmen. Those are pejoratives, primarily European crafted pejoratives that don't really explain or describe who these folks are. And to some extent, in this part of the northern part of Mali, Fulani are also there, Fulani people. There's also a persistent problem of race in Mali, because much of the distinction between the north and the south was the north was under the leadership of these Tamashiks, the Berbers and Arabs, the lighter-skinned folks, and they enslaved many of the darker-skinned folks from the south, from below the Sahara, sub-Saharan Africans, the Bambara, the Malinka, and the Songhai. This also is the home. Mali is also the home of the Dogon. That mysterious ethnic group that had this elaborate knowledge of astronomy and astonished the French when they first came and discovered them. And they remain. This Dogon group really has remained aloof from much of this intertribal stuff, but Mali is a rich area. It's also the place where griots began. This whole notion of the griot, the singing the history of a people, where you had this group of skilled musicians who sang the narrative histories of certain people. Those are griots, and that whole tradition began in Mali. And these Islamists came there and they banned music. You could not practice any kinds of musical traditions or any of the ceremonies in which music was such an integral part in this part of Africa. You couldn't do it. So, of course, these folks wanted these guys gone as soon as possible. And apparently these jihadist groups who see the opportunity to transform these desert territories in Mali and Algeria and Niger into a location for jihadist training grounds. And so the French incursion was intended to discourage this. And for good reason, because the French have very large investments in that part of the world. There's huge uranium deposits in Niger and northern Mali. And the French have to ensure that they have a ready supply of the nuclear fuel necessary to power their society and most of their economy, because it's based on nuclear power. And so that uranium is an essential part of their economy and everything else. And so that's why they have such a deep investment in that part of the world. And their interests also happen to coincide with the interests of the African Union, which understands that this Islamist, this attempt to take over this part of Africa is a serious threat to the sovereignty of Mali and as a potential threat to the sovereignty of many other vulnerable nations. So it's an interesting development that we have here in Mali, where now the former colonialists are the temporary allies of the indigenous Africans, all in a combined effort to expel these external forces of Islamists. Interesting indeed. Another interesting thing is, what do you guys think about County Board President Tony Preckwinkle's decision to endorse Toy Hutchinson rather than Robin Kelly, her former chief of staff? Do you think that that's some sort of judgment of Kelly's capacities, or is it a political calculation of each candidate's electoral chances? Or is it something else? What do you think? Give me a call. Let me know what is on your mind. And before we do that, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back to the calls. Back 7:32. You guys hear about Rick Ross? Here. He was a victim of a drive-by shooting. He didn't get hit, but a lot. I think they say as many as 10 bullets, 10 shots hit. Were aimed at him, and some of the bullets hit some shops in the area, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He was celebrating his birthday, and because a lot of there's a beef between him and GDs, from what at least some GDs. There's some who say that there is no beef, but there's a group of GDs who said that they after him because he used Larry Hoover's name in vain or something like that. Interesting. This whole thing is amazing how hip hop and music entertainment has gotten all intertwined with this criminal enterprise and this whole gangbang thing. It's an incredible phenomenon. It really is. This part of the incredible situation we find ourselves in this country as a people is absurd. I'm sure that many of you heard, and of course we've been talking about the killing of the sister today. The sister who was on her way, she just come back from the inaugural day celebration. It's really a sad tale for us in this city, and in every city, really every urban area of this country is suffering from similar kinds of trauma. We got to deal with it. I have my own idea about how to deal with it, and I've often spoken of that idea on this show, and I think that it's reaching the point where we have to, I think, urge our leadership to say something in concert, to make a plea in concert, to make it an unignorable urging from our people that we have to work on the situation in our country. The situation that is a legacy of slavery, a legacy of our ignoble history. To the phones we go. Maceo, good evening. How are you, my brother?
Hey, good evening, Salim. I'm great, and you?
Thank you. I'm well.
Oh, great. First of all, I'd like to thank Anita, and then Man Song for relaying that message to you. Did you get?
Yeah, I called you, man, and I got a strange number.
You did.
Now I don't. I don't have the. Yeah, I called a number. I called a number that Man Song left for me, and I got a young voice. And,
really?
And then the voice. No, I got a voicemail, and then someone called me back, and it was a strange call, man. So I don't.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it with your producer again.
Exactly.
If this is that okay?
Yeah, please do that. Please do that. Uh-huh.
Okay, and first of all, I'd like to address two of your topics right offhand, and that's in regards to President Obama and Mr. Hastings. And now, do you feel, in your opinion, do you feel that some of these things are as a result of bad advice from some of his advisors? And I say that because I received a video where President Obama was talking about the upcoming inauguration, and he has a great respect for Dr. King. And within that video, he talked about his respect and his admiration for Dr. King, and said Dr. King throughout the video. And he has a bust of Dr. King in his Oval Office. However, as John pointed out on Saturday at the inauguration, he referred to him as the preacher and the king. So that seems to me that may be, and I'm not sure if this is correct or not, bad advice from some of his advisors. What do you think?
Well, that's almost let's say irrelevant, because he is in fact creature of his advisors. Much of what he does is for political calculation, and it has to be. I mean, you can't blame him. He's a politician, and that's what. And apparently he has very good political advisors, because they've maneuvered him through some very rocky political waters. So I'm sure he has a lot of faith in those advisors, and and it's probably true that their political calculus doesn't include responding to black people in any serious or forthright way, because it's not politically advantageous to the president, I would imagine. And so that's what essentially that's what Alcee Hastings is saying, that we have to be much more aggressive in what we demand from the president, because he's ignoring us. And I am distressed by that information, because I tend to think that the president would rather be more forthright to us, but he's only doing it because of certain kind of political calculations. But the things that Hastings was talking about, like, this minuscule amount that the administration paid to the black press, man, who supported him slavishly. And he and everyone else gets a bigger slice of the pie, an enormously bigger slice of the pie than the black press, and that's distressing. And then the fact that the CBC gave him 61 names of black nominees, and none of them have been appointed or even interviewed. I don't know if Hastings said interviewed, but not appointed, certainly. And that's distressing too, wouldn't you think? Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. As you said, and a friend of mine is also had mentioned the same thing too. It's because of the political climate. But is it that bad?
Exactly. It can't be that bad, man. And what does he have to lose? It's his second term, and he could at least be a little adventurous in naming black folks.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, I just heard a brother just told me that Cindy Pritzker is his choice. Looks like it may be his choice for commerce, which is another kick in the teeth, man.
Wow. Well, on the subject of Mali, I'm not sure if you received my email, but I received an email from Runoko Rashidi in regards to the situation in Mali.
Yeah,
and
I saw that. He said, I'm in. I talk to Runoko. Well, not talk to him, but we do Facebook notes all the time, about 3 times a week actually. And he sent me a lot of stuff on Mali and some of the problems that they're having, and some of the reasons, some of the ethnic divisions. That's what you're talking about there?
No. Well, the last email that I received from him, it had to do with the manuscripts themselves.
I didn't see that one.
From what he said in his email, they anticipated these extremists coming in, and they saved quite a few of the manuscripts.
Oh, okay.
So they took them out. He took the manuscripts out of the center, out of the library, and so even though they burned it down, the manuscripts weren't there.
Okay, so the library did burn down, though. It did burn down.
Yeah, but a lot of the manuscripts were saved,
right.
And so. And I don't have my computer at home, but there were quite a few of them that were
absolutely.
saved.
But the library itself was an outstanding structure that had just been erected. Through a lot of contributions from folks around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a shame in itself. That's a tragedy that the building, the structure itself was destroyed.
And it's so coincidental that you chose that as one of your topics, and that you remember on Saturday I was telling you about some of the great African warriors, heroines,
mm-hmm.
and the name that I was trying to conjure up Saturday, the woman that I was telling you, the ancestor that fought against the Arabs during the Arab slave trade. Her name was Dahia Kahina. Dahia Kahina, and she assumed leadership from King Kusaila in 688 CE when the Arabs invaded Mauritania, and she drove the Arabs out of Mauritania and then went on to drive Hassan bin Numan out of Carthage in 698. But I was, making the point that she, there's been some really, really powerful women in, our history. And lastly, when I was telling you about the Queen Nzinga, you remember?
Right.
That information was taken from the Lisbon...
Angola, actually. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was taken from the Lisbon Chronicles. And it's essentially in Dr. Chancellor Williams' book on 256, and it talks about how... and while the Congolese kings now harassed us, the Angola region, the region of the Black Terror, in the form of the death-defying Queen Black and Nzinga, whoever heard of a woman leading an army in person, the truth is that she is the greatest military strategist that ever confronted the armed forces of Portugal. Her tactics keep our commanders sweating in confusion and dismay. How about that?
Mm.
I mean, so she was just extremely intrepid, and there have just been so numerous amounts of our ancestors like that, and as I said, the great Harriet Tubman and so forth and so on.
Sure.
But essentially, I just wanted to share that information regarding Mali, and when you get a chance to look at your email, maybe you can.
I will certainly check it out, man.
Tell how many books were saved, because they did quote a number.
Yeah.
But that.
Ain't that something though? I mean, that they would think it necessary to burn down a library.
Oh man,
it's incredible.
I mean. Something. I mean, knowledge. I mean,
yeah.
but that's the whole point. I
Mm-hmm.
think of extremists like that. They don't want that wealth of knowledge, that wealth of history, to be continued to be passed on to future generations.
Exactly.
It seems like they just want, as it is in the case of our people's history in general, to be somehow isolated, distorted, or concealed, or just out of the minds of people, and especially our people.
Yes, sir. All right, my brother.
Okay, thank you, Salim.
Thank you, Maceo. All right, Maceo. Let's go to Jay. Hotep Jay. How are you, sir?
Hey, Hotep, Salim, how you?
I'm well, man. How you doing?
Good, glad to hear that. Hey, listen, let me ask you this, man, and I'm really trying to understand this, and it's been like maybe four years since we've been talking about this guy, Obama. Ever since he's been in office, or when he started his political career, in all honesty, what has he ever really done for black people? I mean, what type of legislation has he really put forward? What kind of moves was he making when he, I guess, was a councilman or assemblyman, or when he was a senator, and now his evolution to president? If you really want to study his history, I don't see that there's anything that he's ever done to really, for us as a people, to honestly say that he would treat African people in a fair and loving fashion. He just hasn't shown it.
When he was a state senator, he sponsored much, in fact, even authored some legislation that was very beneficial to African Americans in terms of the medical, in terms of infant medical care, and in terms of confessions for accused felons. A lot of criminal justice reforms were sponsored under his watch, and some other progressive legislation as well. So he, as a state senator, he did an admirable job of working for the interest of the African American community, and that's what gave people a lot of hope that when he became a U.S. senator, he would carry on that tradition. It turns out, though, as a state senator, much of what he did was aided and assisted and abetted by the president of the Senate at the time, Emil Jones, who was a brother who helped shepherd him along and helped him to be successful in sponsoring that legislation. But nonetheless, his name was on it, and he pushed it.
It just seems to me like you can't expect anything from this guy. Unfortunately, it's basically because we don't really have no plan to put forward to get him to do anything, and we're waiting for people like Al Sharpton, which is absolutely crazy. But another thing I wanted to state is now let's show the contradiction of this whole mortgage fraud nonsense and what they're doing to Valentine. Now, I'm not a big fan of Valentine. I think he got a big mouth. I think he placed himself in this position by saying some of the things that he said. But the way he supported this president, you cannot tell me that this president couldn't have passed word down to leave this man alone. Too many of his buddies that did far worse than Obama have not been prosecuted in this country. Too many of them.
You mean that they have done far worse than Valentine?
The stuff that Warren is supposedly, allegedly to have done, have absolutely walked away scot-free or paid fines. And from what I'm seeing,
all you got to do is look at the bank. All you have to do is look at the banking crisis itself, man, and how many. And there has been no serious indictments on that tremendous fraud that was perpetrated on the American people.
They had a special on on Frontline about this matter. I mean, I just think that people really need to step up and pull the president's coat or whoever his controllers are. Somebody really need to get in touch with Axelrod and the black community and pull him on the carpet, because I've heard numerous of times the president had his wife and the president had Obama on, and all of that. And for him to face this type of scrutiny for what they're accusing him of is fundamentally wrong. And to think he didn't even give black radio the type of money that they truly deserve should also tell us something about the man and his handlers. So it's really the handlers who's running the show. He's just the showpiece.
Well, unfortunately, that's the way it is with most politicians. They follow what their strategists tell them to do. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Hotel, my brother. All right. Yeah, I hear what Jay is saying, and I hear what he's saying. Let's go to Sarah. Hey, Sarah, good evening. How are you, my sister?
Hey, greetings to you, Brother Salim, and greetings to the VON audience.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to touch briefly because I know I don't want to get long-winded. I'll leave it for Saturday. But the situation here with the campaign funding, which is what I was trying to get you to find out about how much was spent in the black, and we can see that it was not even a drop in the bucket compared to what was asked for to be spent with black black publishers as well as black on air. Mm-hmm. And this is atrocious. And if we could sit back as a people who supported this man, give him all of this vote, and this is the amount of money that he spent in the black press, knowing what a disadvantage that we are, especially places like in your area there, Salim, Chicago, Ebony, and Jet Magazine. These people always have to have them on the cover. It's either him or his family or Michelle and her mother. They're always some Obama is on the cover of these publications. And this is shameful the way how these people have been treated, these black publications, to say that you have to go begging these people to advertise with you. You shouldn't have to go. You shouldn't have to do that.
You shouldn't. You're right.
Yeah. This is totally disgraceful. And then you come around to the cabinet appointments when you're looking and we're seeing that, and I get tired of black people. There's only one cabinet post with a black face in it, and that is the one with Eric Holder in it. And then he's not even there because you don't even see him or hear from him. So you might as well even say he's not even there. That's the only cabinet position that you can say that there's a black person in that office. Lisa Jackson of the EPA, she's no longer there. Hilda Solis, who was in charge of the Labor Department, she decided to quit.
And Eric Holder is taking some pretty unusual positions in many cases. For example, probably the area where he could do the best, the most good, is in the criminal justice system, and that the mass incarceration is going unchecked. Still, there's very few changes. They're still arresting so many brothers for possession of marijuana and giving them a felony record, while marijuana is legal in Colorado. And Eric Holder's not doing anything about that. In fact, he's cracking down even. So, what is he doing as a black attorney general even?
Exactly what I said, Salim. That is exactly what I said. It's like, we don't have any sort of representation. So we have gotten absolutely nothing for this vote. And a lot of y'all went out here and y'all voted for him. And y'all keep saying, wait and give him a chance. You're not going to get anything. You see, he went to Nevada to address the immigration issue for the Latinos. Mm-hmm. He has been spending a lot of money with Univision and all these other areas. He spent a lot of money with them. And also, they asked for $20 million, and all they got was $1 million that he spent in the black media, in the black press. Yeah. We have clowns like Tom Joyner and everybody else jumping all over the place, giving free publicity and telling Tavis and Cornell they need to shut up and not to say anything. And man, you see, this is absolutely disgusting. I'm glad that Deval Patrick, had the gumption to go ahead and make that appointment for that black person, even though he might be there for just 6 months and then have to run for that seat. But at least Deval Patrick is showing himself to be, hey, I'm black. This man is qualified. He happens to be black. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and send him up to D.C.
Exactly,
at least
because a lot of people wanted Barney Frank to get in there, and I like Barney Frank too. But I'm really proud of Deval Patrick for doing it. I
am too, because I saw the petition that they had floating around there to get Barney Frank. Barney Frank already have a political position, so I'm glad to see that at least one black man is showing himself that hey, I'm going to use my black card. I'm going to appoint a qualified black person. I don't care what anybody else want to say, but I'm going to put him in this position. And if he so happens to run in 6 months and he win it legitimately, so be it.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you, my sister.
You're so welcome, Salim.
I appreciate it, Sarah. I totally agree. I think that Deval, and he's from Chicago. He's from the Ickes homes. A lot of people were saying from Robert Taylor, but he's from the Ickes, and his father was a saxophone player in the Sun Ra orchestra. That way out musical aggregation that put Chicago on the map. and gave Coltrane many of his ideas. His son Ra, well, Duvall's father was a serious sax and flautist for Sun Ra. And the brother is holding down the tradition of Chicago, although I don't know what that tradition is these days. That tradition may, pretty soon, people used to say, whenever you would say you're from Chicago, they'd say, Al Capone, rat-a-tat-tat. I remember folks in the service, even before I knew of Chicago, people I met in the service who were from Chicago, when they would tell people where they were from, that's what folks would say to them. Al Capone. Now, it's who was it? Larry Hoover, rat-a-tat-tat, or it's some other gang leader, because
Jeff Fort.
Jeff Fort, yeah, right. That's what it would be. Prince Malik. But yeah, our rep is rough. It's a rough thing. When I talk to folks from New York, they always say, ask me, hey man, what's happening in Chi? What's going on in your city? Can you walk out your house? I say it's not that bad, but I heard some gunshots down the street recently, so maybe it is that bad.
So what's the secret in New York then?
Brother Farouk asked me what the secret is in New York. Well, one of the things they do in New York is it's something we prefer not to consider. I mean, for what they call the broken windows theory, they attack small offenses like where there's some degree of dishevelment, the police focus their attention on so that it doesn't spread. Where there are small offenses or small offenses of illegal incursions, they make sure that they don't grow. So that's one of the things that they do, and also stop and frisk. They stop and frisk folks. And they collect a lot of guns that way. And gun crime, if you're caught with an illegal gun in New York, is a serious offense, a felony that I think 4 or 5 years that you have to spend in jail for that. And so it's a very risky thing to do, is to carry a gun in the city. And so I think that accounts for the fact that there are not that many guys carrying guns, although a lot of people are very, very anti-stop and frisk laws, because so many black and Puerto Ricans are stopped and frisked and nothing is found, and so few others are stopped and frisked. But apparently it has had some deterrent effect on the crime in the city of New York. Although, but if you talk to a lot of people from New York, they'll say, hey, it ain't that different. There's still a whole lot of crime in certain areas of New York. You go to certain parts of Brooklyn, Bucktown. You go to certain parts of the Bronx. You go to certain parts of Harlem. It's very, very rough. So don't believe the hype that a lot of the police are putting out. And it's the same for Chicago. Chicago and many parts of the city are not that bad. Most parts of the city are not that bad, but there are certain areas that are horrendous, and those areas put a taint on the rest of the city. So I think that's it. But, and Chicago has some unique aspects as well. The plan for transformation that put all of those people completely destroyed their neighborhood sense and put them in completely new environments in which they were very unfamiliar with. A lot of people had investments in the underground economy in their neighborhoods, and when they were moved out of those neighborhoods, they had to figure out new ways of making money because there's so much commercial disinvestment in these communities. And so there's a whole lot of unique factors in Chicago that account for this high murder rate. And then, of course, the disintegration, really, of the gang culture. There's no more hierarchical discipline among gang members like they used to be, and that used to keep things in check a bit. They don't have that any longer, and so more renegades are running around. And so there's all kind of issues that I don't think New York has to face in the same way. We'll talk about that and many other issues when we come back. Chicago. 809. Rest in peace, brother Leroy Sugarfoot Bronner of Ohio Players. He provided a whole lot of pleasure during a very formative time in my life, and many others, I'm sure. Roller Coaster, Love Roller Coaster, Sweet Sticky Thing, Free, name them. That brother used to do it. And so, rest in peace, my brother. Also, rest in peace is Hadia Pendleton, the sister we were talking about before, and that's another point of contention for a lot of folks. They want the president to speak more forthrightly about the gun violence in the inner city communities of our country, and not just the assault gun violence that has attracted the headlines as of late. That's another issue of contention. And even people who said, hey, the president really, what can he do? Why should he come to Chicago and speak out, even though it is his hometown? I could understand that, that may be asking a bit too much of him, a bit too much of a bias toward a particular city. But now we have this sister who had just returned from an inauguration celebration. I think that is just too symbolically potent to leave out, not to respond in any serious way. I think the president has to say something, has to do much more than the kind of, perfunctory gesture toward the violence in this city. What do you think? Let's go back to the phones. Let's see, who is it? Ray. Hey, Ray. Good evening.
Good evening, Salim. How are you?
I'm well, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing great, too.
Good.
I called to talk to you about the gun control legislation, but before I do that, I had another question to ask you. I heard you mention Coltrane's name.
Yes, sir.
A few moments ago, and there's a host that is on WVON that the only thing they play is Coltrane music.
Is that right?
I'm asking you, what kind of person is it that would only play Coltrane? And I've been listening to this host for quite some time, some years, and I've been listening carefully, and I've been trying to catch them playing something besides Coltrane, and I've been unable to do that. Now, what kind of person would that be that could play nothing but John Coltrane?
Maybe a Coltrane fanatic, perhaps.
Yeah, but he's got to be smart, intelligent, strong. He's got to have a lot else going for him besides being a fanatic for Coltrane.
Okay, well, I go for those. I go for those descriptions. They sound apt.
Okay. Well, my main question was about the gun control legislation.
Yes, sir.
And the question I had, and I wanted your opinion on that, was if you thought there was a racial aspect to the type of laws that they pass and where they pass them. Well, what I'm getting to is cities like Chicago, New York. I'm not so sure about Detroit or Philadelphia or Los Angeles. It seems that we know these cities have large black populations, but they seem to have much more stringent gun control laws than anywhere else around in the country. And I want to know if you thought that there was any racial aspect to the fact of the large population affecting the type of legislation that they pass.
Ray, yes, I do. In a lot of ways, though, it is inadvertent racial aspect. Like, let me explain what I mean. Like the crack cocaine disparities, where people are in prison for longer times, for longer sentences if they're caught with crack rather than if they're caught with powder cocaine. Well, much of that legislation was encouraged by African American legislators, because they saw crack as having a disparate effect on the black community, as if it was oriented or designed specifically to afflict black people. And so they thought it should be treated differently because it had that disparate effect on the black community. But the unintended consequences of that is that black people wound up spending more time in prison because they were the ones who were more likely to be caught selling or using crack. And it's the same, I think, with this gun thing. A lot of African-American legislators are anti-guns or more in favor of gun control because the carnage in the black community, the guns, the handguns that are being used in all of these murders in the black community are seen to be the primary culprit. And so they aim their attack at these pistols and it's more stringent gun control. And so that has the inadvertent effect of making areas where there are more black people areas that also have more stringent gun control. Was I clear with that?
You were very clear with that, and I agree with that. Now, one other last point that you had mentioned about when the gang leaders and controllers were in charge, that it seemed to be that there was more order amongst the lower rank members and officials or people in charge. But it seems to me, now, you've been in Chicago, since 1946 or something?
No, man, since 70.
Okay, I'm putting you back too far.
Since 73, actually.
Yeah, well, back in the 60s, those leaders were in full control of the gangs. And it seems as though we were having almost twice as many gang-related
that's a good point,
killings
that's a good point.
As we have now. It seems as though some kind of way we rewrite history. Not you, but
no. I hear that. I mean, that's a very good point. I think, although I think at that time what was happening was a new kind of that was right after the Black Power explosions. The so-called long hot summer riots, when people felt a little bit more energetic or cathartic, they were letting loose more of their anxieties, and I think that was part of that spirit of the times. Although it's really hard to explain, really, in a lot of ways, why the crime rate was so high during that period. But during the 60s, it really wasn't that high. It was in the late 70s and 80s when it really shot up during the crack era.
Well, I live in one of those neighborhoods you were talking about. It's called Lawndale.
Yeah.
And they were running through the front and back of my yard with shotguns, rifles, pistols, and all other kind of weapons. So I lived through it. So it seemed to me that in the I guess it was the 70s too, because it was primarily started in the late 60s.
Right, but I mean, even until the 60s, the crime, the murder rate wasn't that high. It was I think it wasn't above 500. It really started to shoot up in the mid 70s, and then it really shot up in the mid 80s.
Yeah, to reach this peak in the mid 80s, come close to 1,000 people.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ray.
Salim.
All right, man. Brother Ray, let's go to Dwight. Hey, Dwight, Hotep.
Okay, brother, I could, based on what I've heard thus far, I could deal with maybe 20 different topics, excellent topics.
Okay,
thus
man.
far. I'm serious. No, I am absolutely serious. So I'm going to put the vaccines on hold perhaps till Saturday for Brother West.
Okay.
And then, I have to say about you all's comments on Mr. Barack Bush.
Yes.
Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? Or in this case, because I don't call my people cow. I call them sheeple. So why buy the sheeple when you can fleece them for free?
Yeah, that's true, man. You're right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean it's been going on, and some others have been saying this, but I have been screaming loud and long since he started not nominating, but picking his advisors for the previous election. When I start checking out who his advisors were, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And then just today, I was listening to NPR, flipped my glasses down. This author, Aaron David Miller, I was unfamiliar with him. He's a distinguished scholar for the Woodrow Wilson Institute, and he's written several books, mostly on Arab-Israeli politics. Mm-hmm. But he was being interviewed on the Hagel nomination, and then he branched off and started talking about Barack Bush, and he was saying that he's like Bush 41, but he's also like Bush 43. He's just the more effective Bush. That's what the guy said, not me. So, with the complaints that are now forthcoming, I just can't see why you, SalimMuWakkil, and everybody else aren't calling this guy Barack Bush.
Because come on, man, come on, Dwight.
No,
I know you feel attached to this moniker, man. But
no, sir.
But Dwight, you gotta admit, man, that's a juvenile move, bro.
No,
calling people names. I mean, that's that. Come on.
Well, what do it take? What do it take to wake some sheeple up, Salim?
Just argue. Just make your point, man. You don't have to.
You did.
You don't think that's juvenile to call people, names that are maybe clever and.
No. See, you're doing me wrong, Salim. That's not a name call. Look, this is politics.
Yes, sir.
You yourself called the Republicans. What was their name?
Republicans.
Republicans.
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm doing is no more name calling.
Okay.
But see, this is for my people who are going down. I'm watching you all go down the wrong path that's leading us off the cliff. There's no salvation.
But I mean, but tell me this though: if you're doing that, Dwight, I hear you, and I understand your anxiety about us doing that. But what's the alternative?
Look, the alternative is to properly assess the guy's behavior. The way you all have been doing.
In our political system, there are certain limits to our to the choices we can make, and
start a third party.
Even that, I mean, there's a limit to that. I mean, who's going to be the candidate?
My goodness. I mean, look, me and you just talking about it on the phone. We're not organizing a third party.
Right.
This is just throwing it out there.
Yes.
So we ain't got to name, who our candidates are today. Just threaten the Democratic Party, who don't do diddly squat for us, by starting the process of forming a serious third party. Let me get to Molly, please, before my time is up. I've been, I think I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Afrocentrist. I think I can speak for Afrocentrism, even though I don't have no PhDs and no other ones except a D in front of my name.
Okay.
But I object to the term ancient being attached to those manuscripts from Timbuktu. Okay. I would say something more like historical, because they're only, at best, several hundred years old, and in the context of Africa, that's hardly ancient.
Okay.
And the documents...
It was ancestral. I think that's the word I would say.
Okay. Ancestral for some. But those documents, I wouldn't even call them ancestral.
Okay.
Because the documents are, the bent on the documents is that they are anti-African tradition. The authors of those documents, by and large, they had got a lot of information from people you mentioned, like the Dogon, and from Kemen, et cetera, from the Greek writings. So there was a lot of treatises on astronomy and mathematics, et cetera. But the historical perspective on the documents is that they, just like the documents are being destroyed today because they were reputed to be impure, not pure enough Islamic. Mm-hmm. And in the time of the writing of these documents, the people who the historical aspect within the documents. They said that these people were heathens and savages and so on and so forth. So the documents promoted the waging of jihad against the people. And one of the libraries, the main library that you all been talking about, is the Ahmed Baba Library. Ahmed Baba was a piece of crap. He is the one who wrote that the reason for enslavement is unbelief. So if you're an African practicing any religion other than Islam, now if you're practicing Christianity or Judaism, you could get a pass, what they call it, the jizwa. You can pay a tax to the Islamic government, and you're allowed to practice your religion. But if you're a traditional African in your beliefs, then you get nothing but enslaved. Ahmed Baba wrote that, the same one that the library is named after.
Mm-hmm.
See?
All right.
All right. You know.
Well, it's good to keep that in context. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that.
All right, Hotep.
Right. Indeed. And, you know, many of the traditions of that part of Mali were really involved with enslavement, the enslavement of the Bambara people, Malinke people. Also in Mauritania, even right now, there's a lot of reports of enslavement still going on in that part. There's a lot of cultural toleration of enslavement in that part of Africa, and that's an important part of the equation that we need to keep in mind. Thank you, Brother Dwight. Let's go to Callan. Hey, Callan. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Salim. My condolences to Hadia Pennington family and to the Coleman family, which they lost two sons to gun violence.
Wow. Mm.
And today's New York Times out there in New York talking about the gun violence in Chicago.
Yes,
they said Chicago had the toughest gun laws, but still the violence just keep going up.
That's right.
And I want to know what our mayor had to say about that today, even though he was in a news conference today with the family talking about he condoned with the family, but still, before this month is over, we're going to have homicides over 50 people. And at this rate, if we keep going, you're going to be over 600 people for the year.
That's right.
And concealed carry is coming very soon, Salim. So what the sheriff said and Milwaukee County Sheriff said,
that's right. He said that the Milwaukee County Sheriff put out a public service message that people better arm themselves, because that would make that if they want to ensure their own protection, they need to arm themselves and take some courses in firearm management. So that was an extraordinary message from a law enforcement officer.
No. If the Cook County Sheriff said that, what would have happened?
The mayor would have, I think, exploded. He would have physically exploded.
Like I said, he would have exploded. But the citizens of Chicago had enough of this violence in Chicago. I think we're going to have to go with concealed carry get it going quickly, and take out those punks and the urban terrorists who want to create crime and mayhem in the community.
You think concealed carry would stop this?
It won't stop it, but it will hinder.
Mm-hmm.
If the criminal and the urban terrorist don't know who's carrying a weapon or not, that means that if he coming out the car and you just happen to a law-abiding citizen be coming past and he starts blasting all of a sudden.
But Callan, let me say, I hear you, and like I always tell brothers who supports concealed carry, I understand your logic. But they have concealed carry in other cities. And it doesn't appear to have stemmed the incidents of violence. St. Louis is one example.
Okay, that's in the major cities, but as a whole, if you look at the states, all the states who have concealed carry, the gun violence has gone down.
Well, that's because violence is going down in general across America, and most states have concealed carry in general. But I mean, the trend for violence has been dropping steadily anyway. But I don't want to get into that. I mean, you may be right. Concealed carry may do it, and I certainly hope that it has some effect on what's going on in Chicago. It's just that I don't see any evidence. I really don't. And I've been looking for it, but I don't really see any evidence.
But Salim,
because
only way you find out, let the law go to effect. Then the criminal and the urban terrorists say, if I take a chance of robbing somebody out here, because that person might have a gun on, I'm not sure you're gonna have a gun on them or not. Or they want to take that chance. So that's what you had to have them think, make them think. See, once the law go into effect, and then the law by citizens protect themselves from them.
We'll see. But see, the other part of this, Brother Callen, is that although it is yet not quite clear what effect concealed carry has on the actual crime rate, it is clear that people with more guns tend to commit more. That when more guns are available in a society, there are more suicides that are attributed to guns. In fact, you realize, of course, that suicide is. That gun deaths are the primary reason for suicide in this country, and also for family accidental shootings and that kind of stuff, right? I mean, there is a certain a level of those kinds of incidents that you can attribute to gun violence.
But Salim, we have to protect ourselves against the criminals and the urban terrorists, no matter what. If you had to protect your family, if you had to protect your next door neighbor, or you had to protect the community, we have to do it.
But see, the question, of course, Callen, is what is protection? It seems pretty obvious, or it seems intuitive that having a gun would mean more protection. But my point is that it doesn't necessarily equate that way, according to statistics.
Okay, so
I would like to. I would like for it to be clear so I can agree with you, but it's not clear.
I'm put you in a situation.
Callen, I'm not talking about anecdotes. I'm not talking about you and me and what may happen. I'm talking about statistics, and statistics don't seem to indicate that people having weapons in their homes means that they will be more protected than if they don't. I don't know if there's statistical evidence of that. I would like for there to be. So
there's statistical evidence that people getting killed every day. I mean, every day of the week, 2 or 3 people get murdered every day. Is that statistical enough for you?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. People are getting murdered, Callen. But other people. But the victims having
24 hours and 7 days a week.
But Callen, the victims having guns doesn't mean that they wouldn't be victims. I mean, there's no statistical evidence of that. That's my point. I hear what you're saying, and it sounds true, but show me some evidence.
Okay, but like I said, the evidence is there, Salim, but like I said, the comments are going to keep going on.
All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Appreciate it. We'll be right back. We're back. 8:37, SalimMuWakkil's here. Talking to Callen reminded me of what Minister Farrakhan said about the Second Amendment. He said it was outdated. In a recent address, he was saying that it's an outdated concept designed for when there were no regulated militia in this country. That those who are using it as a justification for arming themselves are erroneous. That is the minister's perspective. I remember, a lot, and some people were criticizing that perspective. I heard, but I remember, just as probably now. More than ever before, except perhaps during the time of the Black Panther Party, when never before have men been so willing to equate manhood with gun ownership. And during that time, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was cautioning folks about this gun mania that a lot of us had, me included. At the time, they're saying that, look, no matter how, neither your rhetoric nor your calibers are enough to to challenge the might of the U.S. if they decide to come down on you. And in fact, by using the kind of reckless rhetoric that many folks were using at that time, many black revolutionaries with their guns, I remember I was fond of saying, a gun is the most persuasive negotiator. But the kind of reckless rhetoric we were using provided the pretext for the pigs to vamp, as the Panthers used to say. And the messenger was very clear about that. He said, don't be reckless. And, the black community is vulnerable. They can't resist these assaults by the police if you give them the pretext. They're just waiting for that pretext. And so maybe Minister Farrakhan is following that tradition, just warning us about this gun mania that seems to be enveloping us as a people. Like, if we have guns, that will be the solution to our problems. Maybe not. Back to the phone. Zakia, assalamu alaikum. How are you, my sister? Zakia, are you there? Zakia?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I got you.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum salam. I'm well.
Oh, that's good. I heard you and Ray tossing around Coltrane.
Yes.
But, from a sister's point of view that likes to hear female vocalists every now and then, I'd like to hear a little Nancy Wilson sometimes up in there, and Billie Holiday and Sarah and the rest of the sisters,
yes, ma'am.
You could squeeze them in for a couple of seconds, and get on to your point.
I've played some Billie in the past and some Sarah Scatton here and there. I played some doo-wop and, and
I haven't heard any sister singing on your show, and I'm trying to figure out, is this a chauvinistic piece or what?
No. It ain't that.
Oh, okay, brother. About President Obama ignoring the black community.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of black people that I talk to, they're just happy with just the symbolism part of it. You remember you were saying how symbolism means a lot,
mm-hmm.
and it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're very happy with that, Brother Salim, and they're saying he's not the black president. He's the president of the United States. So they just happy. They say that he's in the seat. We're happy to see him in the seat.
That is absolutely true.
That's what they're saying. Happy Negroes, and I mean seriously happy Negroes. So when I asked him, I said, well, don't you think he should extend himself or help the black community at some point like he has? No. The black people need to help themselves. I'm serious.
Well, you hear it on this show a lot. There are folks who call and say that.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, well,
they don't want him to do anything. They are just happy with him doing nothing on our behalf, as if they would if he was doing something in our behalf. I'm telling you, he doesn't have to do anything. Just be the president of African descent. Okay, I'll put it like that.
Yeah, it is distressing that a lot of people. If he were a white president, they'd be people would be raising hell about his neglect of the black community. But somehow, because he has that symbolic identification of being among us, we give him a pass on those policies, and it is distressing. But I think that it is a question of symbolism. I think that really means a lot to people, and it clouds their logic.
But Brother Salim, it's symbolism with no substance. That's what it is. There's no substance there until he starts extending himself to the black community. I don't care how you look at it. I don't care how you try to paint it. I don't care how you try to say his advisors. Well, his advisor, one of his top advisors is a sister, Valerie Jarrett. Okay, what's the other guy's name that was with Mayor Washington, who they were suspicious and said he knew who killed Mayor Washington during that time? What's his name?
I forgot that brother's name, but he had a rather flamboyant hairdo.
Yeah,
is that the cat you're talking about?
He's with the president now.
Oh, huh?
Afterward.
Oh yeah.
Well, you know, right after
not a brother.
death,
Okay, all right. Yeah, David
right after Mel
Axelrod.
Washington's death, the inner circle was Axelrod knew who killed Mel Washington.
Right.
That was going around, and Alton Miller. But they are the advisors. This is the point I'm making. If they are his advisors, and this is his sister Valerie Jarrett, why in the hell isn't she telling that man to get his butt here in Chicago and deal with the issues at hand? That says a lot about her.
Maybe she's saying it, and she's being overruled. I mean, we don't know what the internal dynamics are.
But I doubt it coming from her.
I tend to doubt it as well, because I think that they've concluded that it is not in their political best interest to be that focused on the black community. I think they've made that political calculus. I really do.
And if he was to run next year, next 2 years, most of our people would vote for him again because they're just so happy because he's African descent. They're just that happy with nothing. Do you remember the lessons that we had?
Because he gives us nothing.
Muhammad?
Because he gives us nothing.
Black people love the white man because he gives us nothing.
Absolutely.
And that's the same way it is about president. They love the man. He gives them nothing. He don't care nothing about them. He ain't gonna do nothing for them unless we can just really, 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 really shame him into coming here. Now that might work. But other than that, he gives a damn about us. Some black people think he cares about us.
Yes, ma'am.
But however, they can't see.
Thank you, my sister. Assalamu alaikum.
Mali. Mali, you know what? When I heard you talking the other day, I went and pulled my World Almanac down, book of facts, because you were talking about the resources. You know, Mali is also rich in gold.
Gold as well, absolutely.
Gold, and I don't know, what do they do with phosphate? Because they're rich in phosphate.
Oh, phosphate is extremely valuable. You know, the Israelis use it for weaponry a lot, illegal weaponry, but they use it a lot for their weaponry. It has a illuminating quality in ways that are very unique. So yeah, it's a strategic mineral as well.
Well, what about kaolin? Kaolin. What is that?
Kaolin. I don't know. Maybe it's with another name for coltan. I'm not sure.
Maybe so. It's another rich resource that this country is known for. Well, because I was concerned because I saw the French heading over there, and I know anytime
uranium. That's right.
Anytime the European is headed to Africa to protect Africans, it's because they want to rape and rob the country out of something.
Thank you,
so
Zakir.
I see now. Have a good one, my brother.
You too.
Peace.
Yes, the interests of the French happen to coincide with the interests of some Africans, as the African Union, in fact, at this point in time. An unusual convergence, but one nonetheless. Andre, hey man, how are you?
Hey Salim, how you doing?
Doing well, brother. Doing well.
Yeah. Well, one first thing I want to say is that that was wrong for the guy to just blatantly disrespect you after you told him that you didn't like the sound of Barack Bush. If it was me, I'll let him wait till the end of the show to make his comment the next time. That way it'd be deleted from all of our minds.
Well, I mean, but you know, I can't. I mean, I think it sounds ridiculous every time he says it. So I don't. If he wants to keep sounding ridiculous, it's up to him.
That's right. As the old saying goes, it's best to close your mouth and appear to be a fool than open it and leave no doubt, as the saying goes. So what I like to say about the president there, Salim, is that, you know, when we elected Harold Washington, there was a black coalition that came together and put money and resources to get him elected.
Yes.
We didn't do that with Barack Obama. You know, it was a white coalition. It was a white coalition that came together.
That's right.
And
Harold Washington was political self and in a serious way.
Right. And that's what I want to say. Is, you know, they had African Americans have to think about that. We didn't put no collision together because we didn't seek him out. So white folks sought him out.
Right.
And I'd like to know if you could comment on Salim about this about this immigration bill and about this Mexican border. It seems to me that the United States hasn't called upon this leader in Mexico and talked with him and give him to try to secure his own borders. And they said it's left to the United States, but yet we have a situation with not securing Al-Qaeda. Can Al-Qaeda somehow come in the United States through Mexico since they refuse to do something about their borders? I think that president of Mexico needs to assume.
Brother, Andre, for some reason, man, I can't really hear you. You're very, very vague. I'm gonna have to let you go, brother. I'm not. I heard something about borders and whatnot, Mexican borders, and yeah, we're securing borders more than we ever have before, according to the president when he made the speech today. That there's more border patrol, more boots on the ground, as he says, and even drones are patrolling the border to ensure that they're not as permeable as they once were. But of course, things have changed as well. The economic situation. One of the reasons why there were so many Mexicans and people from the Southern Hemisphere streaming toward this country is because our agribusinesses had gone into their country and completely displaced their indigenous farmers and made them their self-sustaining agriculture irrelevant and almost impossible to maintain in parts of Latin America with these agribusiness factories, these agricultural factories that we favor, that the West tends to favor. And so that's why a lot of indigenous farmers and others who were workers on these indigenous farms came to this country in such, large numbers, and that's part of the problem as well. Let's go back to the phones. Reese, hey, how you doing?
Yeah. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, hello. This is Reese.
Hey, Reese, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I've been on hold a long time, so
yes, sir.
a lot of issues came up while being on hold.
Okay.
So I try to be cohesive as possible with my comment.
All right, bro.
First of all, going back to the sister you just had, there's a perfect example of what fallacy thinking is. And I don't know if she went to a Chicago public school system, but if she would use one of her resources and pick up a book on critical thinking, she would see all the fallacies and syllogisms that she threw out there that made her really sound very ignorant.
Well, what is that, brother? What is that?
The comments she made without the arguments she made.
See, just asserting ignorance is no. You're not presenting any kind of serious evidence that somebody.
Well, I'm using ignorant in terms of things that she don't know. In other words, the premises that she made.
Well, but you keep saying that. What premises are you talking about? What do you mean?
First of all, she said Barack Obama did nothing, and the Negroes are just happy Negroes, which is not true because there's actual facts and statistics and evidence of what Barack Obama has done for the black community. And I heard that you said, and I heard what quite other people said. Barack Bush, that's what he was saying. All that is wrong. It's wrong. This is what happens when somebody excels to a position and then we have other people try to bring them down, poisoning the well and sitting out red herring based on the fact of their own insecurity for the lack of what black people have done. The failure is not Barack Obama. The failure is the black people in America and the impotence in the political structure that we have. That's what we have to face. Barack Obama has done quite a lot for the black community, and if you have the time, I can tell you plenty of them.
Well, we don't have the time, but I can read that list too. So I hear you, and there it has been.
It seems like whenever somebody calls and they have a divergent opinion, then it's way extreme leftist stuff that you guys are talking, which is totally a bunch of lies, a bunch of fallacies. Then you guys are ready to get him off the phone. But I was saying something ignorant and call the president out his name and all that. I would probably get as much time as the other.
Well, not this time. Not this time in our program. You wouldn't. Earlier, if you call. I mean,
I don't have a Muslim name or nothing, but I've been on hold for about.
Well, see, but brother Reese, now apparently you have a lot of gripes that you want to get off your chest, and I understand that, man. Well, you're talking about Muslim names and people who leftists that I mean, you don't have to make those kind of charges to make your point, brother. Thank you, man. Okay, let's go to Earl in Hyde Park. Hey, Earl, what's up? I mean, the brother, you know, he starts off trying to. I mean, it's really hard to understand some of our brothers.
But man, people are passionate, man.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you know, their passion takes over. And I mean, you know, and they put together, you know, positions and so on and so forth, and they, you know, they get their teeth in the bone like a dog. You know, and they want to promote that and fight it all the way through. And the only thing I guess I got time for is to try to relate back to the guy that wanted a third party and started a third party to
Dwight.
Put pressure on the Democratic Party. It's a situation where if you're going to put all that energy into making a third party, you might as well put that energy also into the Democratic Party. That's my opinion, because it's a lot of work. You just can't throw a name up on a billboard and expect people to vote for you. You got to come up with a platform. You got to go out and try to build a power base. You got to go out and try to get money. So all of these things are already in place in the Democratic Party. If you're going to try to sway the public opinion, you already have a medium to try to work with. You don't have to go out and do a new one unless you know, you just don't have any alternative, but you do have an alternative. There is somewhat of a difference, I believe, between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And I think there's more sympathy for some of our positions. But we have to fight for our positions. We have to state our positions. We have to go out and, you know, campaign our positions. Just because I hold something near and dear, that doesn't mean that the rest of the nation does.
No, you're absolutely right, Earl. And I think a lot of times people use third party as an excuse not to really do serious work in the Democratic Party, because you know there are options to take over. Look at Harold Washington. I mean, look what Harold Washington did. He really subverted the Democratic Party, but it was already an infrastructure there that allowed him to do that. He
exploited it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And as you point out, man, it's an extremely difficult undertaking to create a third party. I've been involved in 2 attempts to do it, so I know it's an extremely hard undertaking.
The only point I was trying to make, it's not a cavalier adventure just to go out and start a third party. It's a heck of a lot of work and a heck of a lot of time. Thank you. I'm going to hang up and see if you can get somebody else in. All right, buddy?
All right, Earl. Thank you, brother. Okay. All right. And the one who's coming on next is going to take us out on a very strong note. Brother James, hey, man.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Barack Bush don't sound ridiculous to me.
Okay.
That name says it all in a nutshell.
It sounds
and
ridiculous
how is somebody sounding ridiculous calling a war criminal Barack Bush when he's bombed cities and killed untold number of people, and in Africa bombing right now. And let me tell you this, brother.
He's a president, man. That's what the job description of a president is.
Yeah, right.
So what do you expect something different?
Okay, let me. No, I like that because it says it all. Let me tell you this.
Exactly. So tell me why you expect something different.
Okay.
He applied for president. That's the job description.
Brother, you know our time is short. Just let me get this in, bro. Let me say this. When Reagan and the Bush before him was in office, these Negroes called them everything under the sun. Not one Negro called in and said, "Oh, we shouldn't say that about Reagan. Oh, we shouldn't say that about Bush."
Right.
Now you get this old narrow behind Negro up there. Oh, he's talking about president.
But James, don't you see how foolish you sound, man, when you use those ad hominem put downs, man? You don't have to.
How you sound foolish when they
an intelligent man doesn't have to call people names. That's what a kid does.
But let me ask you this, brother. Talk to me. Negro call up here and defend them. You was there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, "Hey, man, no, Reagan." You should call him Reagan.
I mean, say that, brother. Listen, I ain't heard no Negro call
come on,
up
man.
Don't call
you heard you didn't. You must have not been listening to intelligent brothers if you didn't hear people say, "Look, man, calling folks names don't win arguments. That makes you look juvenile."
Okay, brother.
It really does, man. I don't know why you can't see that, brother.
Hey, no, what I see is when I'm talking to the average black person and I say Barack Bush, I see they eyes get wide.
Well, that makes them.
Because they think it says something to them. It says it all.
Don't they get angry at you?
No, they don't get angry. They start thinking, man, what Barack Bush, that's saying something. Hey, let me say this real quick.
Go ahead.
Now, that police promo telling people to arm and police yourself was absolutely frightening.
Yeah,
and the African-American talk show host who played that promo and pushed that garbage, they do not know what they are doing.
I think you're right, brother. I think you're right about that.
All roads lead to us. These people have an agenda.
All right, man.
The agenda, okay, bro.
Is to get rid of us.
Is us.
Okay, man.
When you get into that garbage, they going to slaughter us.
All right, James. Thank you, bro.
That's what they setting up. Okay, brother. Straight ahead.
All right, straight ahead.